Sarvopanishado gavo Dogda Gopala Nandanaha Partho Vatsa Sudhir Bhokta Dugdam Gitamrutam Mahat. In this fifth lecture in the Shrimad Bhagavad Gita lecture series, we're going to close the topic of Ashray. In the second chapter, Shlok 7, Arjun looks to Sri Krishna Bhagavan and he says to him, Karpanya dosho pahata svabhava Pruchami tvam dharma samudha cheta Yat shreyasyan nishchitam bruhitanme Shishyas teham shadi mam tvam prapannam. I am your disciple. Guide me. Arjun has a conflict in his life. And it's a conflict as such that he should be afraid. Everyone has fear in their lives. In any conflict, when we're afraid, the person we turn to first, the thing we turn to first to get us out of that fear, that's where our ashray, our refuge lies. Arjun turned to God, so God always protected him. Fear. Everyone has some sense of fear. Children have fear. That's why they never want to leave the side of their parents. Parents have fear. What will happen to my child? Everyone is afraid of something. But in that fear, how we behave, that's important. For example, many years ago, I went to Africa. In Botswana, about 2.5, 3 hours away, there's a small town called Francistown. I went to a devotee's home. After one of the evening assemblies, we went to the devotee's home. A normal house. It wasn't a huge mansion of any kind. That's important. Just a normal house on a normal street. But as we got closer, the devotee called. He called his armed security guard to come out of the house. The armed security guard came out of the automatic gate. He let in our minivan. And he stood there to make sure that no other cars entered. And as the gate closed, he came inside. Before we got out of the car, the security guard looked all around the car to make sure there were no snakes or anything on the ground. We got out of the car, and the devotee who had driven us, he took out 2 keychains, 2 rings of keys. We went to his door, and from the first keychain, he opened one door outward. Then he opened another door outward. Then from the second keychain, he opened a third door inward. And then we entered a small vestibule area where you can take off your shoes, still not into the house. From the second keychain, then he opened a 4th door, then a 5th door, and then again from the first keychain, he opened the 6th door. 2 keychains. That way, if someone had stolen one of the keychains, they still wouldn't be able to go through all 6 doors. 6 doors to enter the house. And that's just the living room. A small living room. We entered in. 1 hallway to go into the bedrooms, 1 small doorway to go into the kitchen. Both of those areas were locked with a steel door, which is a small area opening on the top. He opened up both of the steel doors and he showed me to my room. He said, Swamiji, you'll be staying in this room. And he showed me 2 buttons. He said, there's a button by the door and there's a button by the bathroom. If something happens, this button is an alarm. This isn't fake. This is a real button for a real alarm. Don't just press it as a joke. I'm going to lock you inside your bedroom. And then I'm going to lock the steel door at the end of the hallway. I've given you 1 or 2 water bottles here, and you have access to the bathroom. I'll be here first thing in the morning. I'm in another bedroom. And I asked him, why all of this security? This is better than Fort Knox. Why all of this security? And he said, it's not safe. I don't feel safe here. He said, I'm not wealthy. I'm just a normal person. But despite having whatever I have, I still don't feel safe here. Fear. Fear causes us to want to have 6 doors and 2 steel doors in our house. It was needed. The president has so much security. But does he feel safe? Arjun felt safe with God. That feeling of safety, of comfort, that's what refuge gives us. And God protected Arjun all throughout the war. There was an incident many days into the war where Arjun had to leave the ground of Kurukshetra to go fulfill a promise he had made to someone else. Now, on the day that he was out, Jaydrath, one of the warriors in the Kaurav army, he took this opportunity. Before the war had taken place, he had done austerities and received a boon from Shankar Bhagwan. When Shankar Bhagwan asked him, "What do you want?" Jayadratha said, "I want to be able to stop all 5 Pandavas in war." Shankar Bhagwan said, "That's impossible. You will never be able to stop all 5 Pandavas. But I can give you a promise that through my powers, you'll be able to stop 4 Pandavas." Jayadratha said, "Which 4?" At that time, Shankar Bhagwan said, "You'll be able to stop Yudhishthir, Bhim, Nakul, and Sadev. But you will not be able to ever stop Arjun." Jayadratha said, "What makes Arjun special?" Shankar Bhagwan said, "It's nothing about Arjun as a particular individual. Pantena Krishnena Rakshite. He's protected by Krishna Bhagwan. So there's nobody who can stop him." So Jayadratha saw this as an opportunity. Arjun is not here in the war. Today is my opportunity to stop the other 4 Pandavas, and we can do something as a Kaurav army to kind of shift the war onto our side. This is after Bhishma Pita has already fallen in the war. At this time, Jayadratha, he distracts the other 4 Pandavas and he fights against them single-handedly. Other 6 warriors from the Kaurav army, they create a formation called the Chakravyuh and they kill Arjun's son Abhimanyu. They kill other soldiers as well, but the main target was Abhimanyu. 6 against 1. It breaks all of the rules of war. When Arjun comes back and he finds out what happened, he asks, who was the reason, the real reason, the root cause for this problem? Why this took place? And everyone says, it wasn't the 6 people. They were the secondary cause, but the primary cause was Jayadratha. He held up the other 4 Pandavas, your 4 brothers, from protecting your son Abhimanyu. And Arjun, at that time, Arjun takes a vow. He says that by tomorrow evening, before the sun sets, I swear that I will kill Jayadratha. And if I don't kill him before the sun sets, then I myself will sacrifice my body into the fire. I'll kill myself. And when he takes this vow, both sides, the Kauravas and the Pandavas, are worried. The Pandavas are worried, what if Arjun can't keep his vow? And the Kauravas are worried, what if Arjun does keep his vow? But only one person is not worried, Duryodhana. Duryodhana is thinking to himself, well, this is great. All we have to do tomorrow is pass the time. So if we keep Jayadratha behind everyone else, and we do whatever we can to pass the time tomorrow, the sun will set, and Arjun will have no choice but to sacrifice himself to the fire. The next morning, Krishna Bhagwan wakes up before everyone else, and he's preparing his horses. Yudhishthira is worried. He can barely sleep at night. Yudhishthira goes to meet Krishna Bhagwan, and he says, Krishna, I pray to you, do whatever you can to protect Arjun. And Krishna Bhagwan tells Yudhishthira, Mama sharirardham Arjunaha. You don't have to worry about Arjun, because he's half of me. I treat him as if he's part of my own body. And then, after Yudhishthira leaves, Krishna Bhagwan looks at one of the other charioteers, Daruk, and he tells Daruk that today, no matter what happens, I am going to make sure Arjun keeps his vow. Daruk asks him, what do you mean, no matter what happens? What are you potentially ready to do? What are you potentially ready to give up and sacrifice on behalf of Arjun? Krishna Bhagwan says, because Arjun has complete faith in me, Mama Atma Arjunaha. It's as if he's my soul. I am ready to sacrifice everything. If I have to die on behalf of Arjun, I will. But I will make sure Arjun lives. Everyone is just in awe about how ready Krishna Bhagwan is to sacrifice himself for his devotee. Krishna is Bhagwan. Arjun is a bhakt. But when a devotee dedicates himself entirely to God, God entirely dedicates himself back to that devotee. That morning, at the very beginning of the war, Duryodhana organizes his entire army in such a way, Suchi Mukam Anikam Syat, as if it's shaped as a needle, comes to a strong point, and at the very front of the army is Dronacharya, a very capable, very strong warrior, not someone to be taken lightly. Dronacharya calls out to Arjun, fight me today in battle. And Arjun, being a warrior, is more than happy to take up any challenge. So he takes up his bow, and he says, all right, It's me versus Dronacharya. And Krishna Bhagavan looks at Arjun and he says, look, we've got thousands of people in front of us today. If the first person was some simple warrior, then it would be okay. We would have time to go through him. But if the first person is Dronacharya, again, if the first mountain you ever have to climb is Mount Everest, you're not going to be able to get past this. You start something small. Arjun says, what are we going to do? He's already challenged me and I've accepted his challenge. Krishna Bhagavan has to find a way. Krishna Bhagavan tells Arjun, Dronacharya is your original teacher, Guruji. And to please your Guruji, your Vidya Guru, bow to him. Fold your hands. Don't fight against him. Just fold your hands and ask for permission to go forward. Arjun is confused. He says, how is that possible? Just try it. So Arjun puts his bow down, folds his hand. Jai Swaminarayan, Dronacharya. Will you let me pass? And Dronacharya says, fine. And just like that, Dronacharya lets Arjun pass. Duryodhana sees this. He can't stand it. He goes to Dronacharya and he starts to berate him. What are you doing? What are you doing? How can you let Arjun pass like this? If you'll let him pass, I'll fight against him. And Duryodhana goes and he challenges Arjun. Arjun says, what do I do against Duryodhana? He's not one of my friends. I can't fold my hands to him. He's not going to let us pass. And it begins. It's still early in the morning. Duryodhana versus Arjun. And they fight against each other. And this battle is going back and forth, back and forth. Every time Arjun hits Duryodhana, it's as if the arrows just keep flying off of him. Arjun's like, I can't understand why Duryodhana is not being penetrated by my arrows. And Krishna Bhagavan says, he's wearing something you can't see. He's wearing some special armor, mystical. Arjun says, if I can't see it, how can I defeat it? Krishna Bhagavan looks on his behalf. And Krishna Bhagavan tells Arjun, focus your vision. The way you did when you were much younger, don't focus on all of Duryodhana. Focus on each part of him and find out where there's an empty space. And at that time, Arjun focuses one after the other on each part of Duryodhana's body and he sees that there's an opening in between his fingernails and the actual finger itself. That's a point. And Krishna Bhagavan says, fine, fire your arrows there. And Arjun fires arrows at Duryodhana's fingernails. And Duryodhana is so just scared. He's so hurt by it, he leaves. He runs away from battle and he goes back to his teacher, Dronacharya. And he says, always I've seen it in your heart. You've always had this soft side for the Pandavas. Dronacharya says, what are you talking about? He says, look, both Arjun and I were your students. Growing up, we both learned from you. And yet, here we are against each other in battle. And I have this special armor. And yet, despite that, Arjun is able to defeat me. You taught him something more than me. You've always had a soft spot for the Pandavas and especially Arjun in your heart. Dronacharya looks at Duryodhana and Dronacharya says to him, let me tell you one thing. I'm a man of sophistication and a man of etiquette and ethics. I live in your house, so I live by your rules. But one thing you need to understand is that Arjun, he has grown up in the forest. He has suffered and tolerated throughout his life. He's been through hardships. You grew up in a kingdom. You're a child who's been born with a silver spoon in your mouth. You've never suffered anything. You will never be as strong of a person as Arjun. And if you're thinking in your mind that I have a soft spot in my heart for him, it's not like that. My soft spot for Arjun is public. Everyone knows that my heart lies with Arjun. My body only here on your side. So if you have a problem with Arjun, you need to take it up with him internally. But there's no way I can help you anymore. Duryodhana has nothing to do. He leaves. Arjun moves forward and another warrior named Yuyudhan, also known as Satyaki, he goes towards Dronacharya. He has seen from the morning that Arjun fought against Dronacharya for a little bit and went ahead. He thinks to himself, maybe I'll have the ability to challenge Dronacharya. He challenges Dronacharya to a battle and Dronacharya tells him, Mahajano yena gataha sapantha. Follow the footsteps of your leader, Arjun. Don't try to challenge me in a battle, child. You will not win. Instead, bow to me just as Arjun did, and I'll let you pass. I'll forgive you. Satyaki realizes his mistake, bows to Dronacharya. Dronacharya lets him pass. But there's another warrior at the time named Bodhishrava. And Bodhishrava doesn't like the fact that Dronacharya has let Satyaki pass. Bodhishrava challenges Satyaki to battle. The two are fighting against each other. Bodhishrava jumps into Satyaki's chariot, grabs Satyaki by the neck, knocks off his helmet, and has a sword in his hand and is about to decapitate Satyaki. At that time, Krishna Bhagwan is driving Arjun's chariot further towards Jayadratha. But from the corner of his eyes, Krishna Bhagwan can see that Bodhisattva is about to decapitate Satyaki. He tells Arjun, fire an arrow to the right side and take care of Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva goes to cut off Satyaki's head, and Arjun fires his arrow. Arjun's arrow cuts off Bodhisattva's hand as it's falling. Satyaki is saved. Bodhisattva is looking, and he can't even understand where this arrow has come from. This whole incident is being watched by Bhim. And Bhim is about to celebrate, and as he turns his head to the left, he sees that Vikarna, one of the warriors in the Kaurav army, is being killed. Now Vikarna, when Draupadi was having her clothes pulled by Dushasan, actually stood up to say something against Duryodhan. And because he stood up to say something against Duryodhan, Bhim in his heart felt that Vikarna is a good guy. I understand that he has no choice but to fight for the Kauravas, but he understands that it's the wrong side. He wanted Vikarna to live, but seeing Vikarna die, Bhim says, Yuddha dharma khalu nishturaha. The ways of war are just unfathomable. This is life. On one side, there's victory. On the other side, there's defeat. Every happiness comes with some sort of unhappiness with it. Life comes with death. Day comes with night. Victory comes with defeat. Yuddha dharmaha khalu nishturaha. Jivana dharmaha khalu nishturaha. Everything in life always comes as a dichotomy. Bhim, he can't celebrate the victory of Satyaki because he's also sad about the defeat of Vikarna. And as he goes to look back, Arjun is gone. Arjun is getting closer and closer to Jayadratha. And as he gets closer to Jayadratha, Krishna Bhagwan slams on the brakes to the chariot. And he stops. It's almost sunset by now. He gets off of the chariot and Arjun says, Bhagwan, we need to hurry. We have only moments left. Bhagwan says, I need to do something. He gives water to the horses. He cleans some of their wounds. And he gives the horses a break. Every being that comes to the feet of God, whether it's a horse or a person, God takes care of everyone. At the very beginning of the Mahabharata war, in the first chapter in the Shrimad Bhagavad Gita, when the Pandavas and the Kauravas started to play their instruments and started to play out their shanks, the birds from Kurukshetra got so scared that they all started to fly away. But there were a few birds that still had their eggs in their nest. Now those unborn birds, what about them? They fell to the ground, and one of the birds prayed at that time, Dear God, protect my children. She doesn't have words, she doesn't have anything. But in her heart, that bird prayed, Dear God, protect my unborn children. And at the very beginning of the war, the very first thing Krishna Bhagwan did was he drove Arjun's chariot towards one of the elephants, cut a bell off the elephant's neck, took that bell and covered the nest and protected those eggs. In 18 days, almost 4 million people died in the Mahabharata war, but the birds, the eggs, they were saved. Sharane ave sabahi tareche. If you take the refuge of God, God will find a way to protect you, to care for you. Yoga kshemam vahamyaham. God takes a pause in the middle of this very terrible day. He gives water to the horses, he cleans their wounds, gets back into the chariot, and he drives the chariot closer to Jayadratha. At that time, Duryodhana has as many Kauravas as he can gather in front of Jayadratha to just cause friction, to keep Arjun away. And then Krishna Bhagwan does something that only God can do. He extends his hand in such a way as to block out the sun. The Mahabharata describes that in one day of the war, there was an eclipse. People saw an eclipse. They saw that the sun set, so without any other context, they started to separate. And when the entire road was clear between Arjun and Jayadratha, Bhagwan took his hand back. The sun was still there. There were still a few moments left. Krishna Bhagwan drives Arjun's chariot as close as he can to Jayadratha, and he says, fire an arrow and take off Jayadratha's head. But when you fire that arrow in such a way that Jayadratha's head is decapitated and lands far away at the edge of Kurukshetra into his father's lap. Now Arjun says, Bhagwan, that's a bit much. Jayadratha has done something against me. His father hasn't done anything against me. Krishna says, right now is not the time to argue. Do what I tell you right now. Arjun does it. He has faith that wherever God tells him to direct his arrows, he'll do it. And with one arrow, he takes off Jayadratha's head and he sends that head flying into Jayadratha's father's lap. Jayadratha's father, his name is Vruddha. Before the war, when he knew that his son was going to be fighting on the side of the Kauravas, he knew that there was very little chance for him to survive. So he himself also started performing austerities to please Shankar Bhagwan. And he knew that his son was going to die. When Shankar Bhagwan came to him and said, "What do you want as a boon?" Vruddha said, "I know my son is going to die. So, the person who kills my son, who has my son's head fall onto the ground," these were his exact words, "the person who has my son's head fall onto the ground, may his head also be decapitated." Arjun sent Jayadratha's head into the lap of Vruddha. When something fell into Vruddha's lap, he was shocked. He stood up and the thing fell onto the ground. Jayadratha's head fell onto the ground via Vruddha. And at the same time, Vruddha was decapitated. With one arrow, two enemies were destroyed. One that was seen and one that was unseen. This is what God can do. Protected Arjun, fulfilled his vow so that he could win another day in the war. Everything in our lives is based on where we take our support from, where we take our guidance from, who is driving our chariot throughout life. Krishna Bhagwan drove Arjun's chariot through all of the obstacles and protected him, guided him. He showed him where to fight, where not to fight, where to bow, and where to stand strong. In the same way, if we give our chariot to the right person, someone who can guide us continuously at every step of the way, where to bow, where to fight, where to stand up, what to do, then we can defeat the enemies we can see and the enemies that we can't see. Pramukh Swami Maharaj in 1988 was in Africa. And through a very small incident, we'll understand just how we should have our faith in God. After a few days in Nairobi, Swami Sri Pramukh Swami Maharaj went to a home visit for one of the devotees. And when he came back to the temple in Nairobi, the Swamis at the time, they were waiting to meet Swami by the steps. In the Nairobi, the older temple, there were 3 or 4 steps that had to be climbed before you could actually enter into the sanctum area. One of the Swamis was old at the time. Pramukh Swami Maharaj came and he saw this frail Swami trying to climb the steps. Pramukh Swami Maharaj said, "Give him my walking stick. Give him my stick." The Swamis were all confused. They said that they all thought to themselves, Pramukh Swami Maharaj has never used a walking stick. Why would he have a walking stick? And yet, despite that, one of the attendants brought a brand new walking stick. The Swamis asked, "Swami, where did you get this walking stick from? Where did you get this?" And Swami explained that I went to a home visit. I met a devotee and he gave me this stick. The Swamis asked, "Why would he give you something that you're not using?" Swami explained that I'm not using it now, but that devotee has a certain sentiment. That devotee felt that currently you don't need any support. But as you age, you may need some support. So I'm giving you this stick as support. And in the future, if you use this stick, every time you use it, you'll remember me. And every time you remember me, my soul will be purified. The Swamis were impressed with the sentiment of this devotee. And they said, "Swami, what did you tell the devotee after he told you this? And he gave you this stick as support?" Pramukh Swami Maharaj, he said, "I looked at the stick and I told that devotee that in my life, I have only one support, the support of God." In our lives, we have many things that we keep as walking sticks, supports. Whether it's money, family, friends, contacts, whatever it may be in your life, I'm asking you to reevaluate where you have your support, where you take your support from. And when you make your first support God, at that time, you have attained the yoga of Arjun. May we all be able to attain this yoga. For that, I pray. Astu.